While the entire world is busy with the Ukraine war, the former Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim, dropped a few bombshells on a national Qatari TV. A few years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Hamad bin Jassim again appeared on a Qatari TV and he described Syria as a prey. And he said that back then, he mentioned specifically Saudi Arabia and Qatar. He said while we were fighting over the prey has escaped while we are still fighting for it. Maybe he also meant President Bashar al-Assad, but that's how he described it. Now, he's again dropping a few bombshells, and he said clearly that there were two operational rooms that anyone who followed the Syrian war know that there were two military operational rooms, one in Jordan and one in Turkey. The one in Jordan called MOK, and the one in Turkey called MOM. And these operational rooms were consisted of delegations, security and military delegations from the United States, from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Jordan, and in also Israel, but they don't mention it, also other regional and international powers. And the duty of these operational rooms were to coordinate the military support, the supply of weaponry, the training, the vetting of the so-called rebels, right? And we all know how it ended up: creation of Al-Nusra Front, ISIS, and other radical jihadi groups in Syria. Maybe that was the intention to begin with. In this interview, he says that Qatar was in charge of the Syrian file in the first few months of the war. This is, firstly, is a lie, is a very clear lie. Anyone who knows anything about Syria or followed the Syrian war knows that Qatar has taken charge of the Syrian file at least between 2011 and 2013. It was in 2013 when the father of the current emir, father of Tamim, he was in charge and he resigned. Also, I think that he was under American pressure and he resigned to his son Tamim. And when he resigned, the Syrian file has been moved from Qatar into the hands of Saudi Arabia. In all this circus, it's the United States who tasked first Qatar to lead the war on Syria in 2011, and then the United States forced or manipulated, call it whatever you want, the Qatari regime to change the faces, and the father is gone and Tamim succeeded him, right? And when that happened, there was also a rift between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and the United States told them that Saudi Arabia should lead this war on Syria. And during this period also, who came as the head of the Saudi intelligence was Emir Bandar bin Sultan, or he's called, or better known as Bandar Bush. Why is that? Because he was the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in the United States for a very long time, and especially under the Bush administration, and he was a close friend with Bush. There were a family relationship between him and Bush. And when 9/11 happened, he was the ambassador. And if you think about it, the majority of the perpetrators of 9/11 were Saudis, and he was very close to George Bush back then. So if you believe something that I don't have any evidence for it, I'm just telling you theories, it's a conspiracy theory, of course. If you believe that 9/11 was an inside job, then Bandar Bush or Bandar bin Sultan definitely had a hand in this. Period. This is just my explanation. So anyways, he came as a head of the intelligence of the Saudi Arabia in, I think, 2013. So at the same time when the United States tasked Saudi Arabia instead of Qatar to lead the war on Syria, and Bandar bin Sultan, according to Hamad, guys, this is 2 trillion. We're not talking billions. We're not even talking 20 billions. It's $2 trillion to remove it. He doesn't specify the number, so we think it's maybe below 2 trillion or it's 2 trillion, but whatever is the number, it's very, very big number, right? Later, Hamad bin Jassim says that Bandar bin Sultan also planned to assassinate President Bashar al-Assad, and their plan was to strike Damascus with missiles. It seems from Ghouta, Jobar, you remember Harasta, all these areas were occupied by the so-called rebels. And he says that the plan was to strike Damascus heavily with missiles and to create chaos inside the capital city of Damascus, and then attack on the palace of the people, or the people's palace, where Assad works, his office is, and to capture him or assassinate. So the scenario was similar to what they did in Libya with Gaddafi. Later he says the plan has failed. Now, with these revelations, of course, I'm very emotional and I'm very mad and angry, but I would like to keep this on a, let's say, more professional track, right? What was all these plans that happened against Syria for? They spent at least tens of billions of dollars. Let's agree on this, right? If they invested tens of billions of dollars in Syria, don't you think that the Syrian people, or the people who protested against the government, would have had a much better life in Syria, into extent that they wouldn't even want to protest or ask for the removal of Assad? Don't you think that they were able to solve the problems of Syria, and let alone the other countries? Don't you think tens of billions of dollars can create hundreds of millions of jobs for the Arab and Muslim people in the region? Some of them are joining these terrorist groups because they are desperate. I'm saying some of them, because of financial reasons. They would have solved lots of problems, from poverty, from unemployment, from... In Sudan, kids are still dying from hunger. And they could have solved lots of issues. And when we say it's not only to feed people, when you create job opportunities, the entire region would change. When you invest in science, when you invest in infrastructure, when you invest in the industrial sector, a lot of things would have changed in a positive way, right? But these so-called Arab brothers, they have spent tens of billions of dollars to destroy Syria. And who tasked them to do this? The United States. Just imagine how much degenerate are these Arab rulers to engage in such a war against Syria, to destroy the country instead of building it. What have they gained from this now, after 11 years? Now they're rushing back to Syria. They want to reopen their relationship back, because they have seen when they weakened Syria, Syria has went closer and closer to Iran, and Turkey is occupying northern Syria, and Turkey is a rival for Saudi Arabia in the region and other regional countries. Historically speaking, the Ottoman Empire was always a threat to Saudi Arabia or the Saudis, or let's say Hijaz or that region, because the rulers back then were not the Saudis. They gained nothing from this. They just spent all this money for nothing in Syria. And we lost almost everything. Our memories, our country, our infrastructure, our future. Now everybody is crying rightly on the Ukrainian refugees, but the same people who are shedding crocodile tears now, they celebrated the destruction of Syria, right? And we all know them very well, from the media, from the activists, from the so-called human rights advocates, etc., etc., etc. You know them all. Now, with these revelations, I would raise the question: aren't these confessions, can't we use these confessions to condemn Qatar and Saudi Arabia or any other countries who invested in the destruction of Syria? This is a clear confession from a former official, which is Qatar. And what punishment are they going to receive for destroying one of the oldest civilizations in the world? And they created millions of refugees. I mean, when Russia attacked Ukraine, all the world stood against, not all the world, sorry, the so-called international community or the Western governments, they stood against Russia. They banned Russian literature. They banned Russian sports. Like, they are banning Yuri Gagarin. They took back his honorary medals. He's dead. And Qatar is gonna host the World Cup, and it has spent tens of billions in Syria, and they are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. They're responsible for creating millions of refugees. Are they gonna withdraw now the Qatar's hosting of the World Cup? I don't know what upside down world we are living in. So I think then President Assad is correct when he said, some people naively ask, what is the legal basis for the Russian attack on Ukraine? And he said, the law is not what is written on paper. The law is what is applied. And if there is no authority to enforce this international law, and if there is no police and there is no judge, then what value the international law has? Because if you're gonna be hypocrites, and if you're gonna apply double standards on the political cases, and when you are okay with murdering hundreds of thousands of people in Syria and not okay for few hundreds or thousands or whatever, it's all tragedy, by the way. But the Syrian suffering is incomparable with the Ukrainian suffering. It's incomparable. You cannot compare it. Yesterday, I raised this question on Twitter, and I said, why do you think Hamad bin Jassim is talking so openly about this case, although it could condemn his own country and other countries in the region? And my friend Hadi Nasrallah, he commented, and I think he's correct. He said, and I'm paraphrasing him now, that he's just sending a message to the Arabic countries who are reopening now their ties with Syria or reopening their embassies in Syria, and telling them, maybe, okay, you want to open up, but don't blame us alone. We were together in this. And we gathered together in here or there, whether it's in Mok or it's in Momdis or military operational rooms. So don't dare or try to blame us alone, because we have evidence, and we were together when we planned to destroy Syria, and we were together when we planned to assassinate the president of Syria, like they did with the leader of Libya, Muammar al-Gaddafi. So this is my comment on this issue. I was really upset watching him in a very open way about, we spent all this money to do this and that. It's like, these are human beings that you destroyed their lives. You changed our destinies, right? And just last thing, now you've been following me for 4 or 5 years on YouTube, and before that I was active on Facebook and Twitter. Just be honest. If you put apple to apple my analysis or commentaries in front of these so-called pundits on Syria, how many times I was right and how many times they were wrong on Syria? When I said from the beginning this is a conspiracy from several regional countries and the United States to destroy Syria, I was called a conspiracy theorist and I was called an Assadist. So they owe me an apology because I was right. And I'm pretty sure that they knew this was a conspiracy, but still they played part in it. And you know all the names of these pundits. They have all these check marks on, verified check marks on Twitter, and they have a very prestigious jobs in so-called think tanks, right? They were wrong from the beginning. They knew nothing about Syria. They do not know the language. They haven't been living in Syria or doing any investigation underground. And they're still called pundits, although they were wrong on so many levels. And I'm the one who is an Assadist and a conspiracy theorist, right? So I think there is no more room for discussion about Syria, whether it was a revolution or a regime change war, a conspiracy by the United States and its puppet allies in the region. What do you think about these revelations, guys? Does it also bother you the way it did to me? It was really boiling when I was watching that video. And if you haven't watched it, you can go back to the previous video, the one just before this one, and check it and let me know what do you think in the comments below. And if you're new, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. It really helps me with the algorithm of YouTube. You know, algorithms are like suppressing. I have now almost 35,000 followers, and between 1,000 and 2,000 people only can see my videos. So of course it's shadow banned. So please help me in this with liking and sharing my videos. And if you want to support my independent commentary work on YouTube, you can become a patron. Link in the description below, and see you next time.